So, been a long time since I talked about shonen final arcs, and it will likely be a longer time before I do so again, because as I've gotten older, I've realized that the genre just isn't for me anymore, since I prefer my media with more depth than a puddle, and that's often not going to happen with a genre targeted for teens. You may also recall that I had cancelled this video a while back, but since that short's release, this arc still hangs in the back of my mind, and like a bad roommate, I want to kick it to the fucking curb! So, this won't be a traditional review of mine. More so, it's just me going point by point to explain why I dislike the final arc of Demon Slayer so that I never have to talk about it again. Also, this should go without saying, but I like covering my bases. Just because I don't like this arc doesn't mean that you have to agree with me, nor does that mean you're wrong for liking this arc. If anything, I welcome discerning opinions. I would like to hear why you enjoy this arc in the comments below. This is just me explaining why I personally don't like it, but you're not wrong for liking it, nor am I going to call you an idiot if you do enjoy it. It just means that we all have different tastes, and I'm interested and nor welcome to hear your opinions in the comments. But yeah, if this ends up getting pulled down, fine by me. I got it off my chest finally. So, the Infinity Castle arc is basically, we'll get to it in a minute, the final arc of Demon Slayer, and as such, spoilers ahead for those who haven't read it. For everyone else, I will preface this by saying that the beginning actually isn't too bad. We get the death of the Demon Slayer leader Kaguya, a big fuck-off explosion, our main antagonist getting hit with a poisonless drug that'll turn him human while he's off guard, and every one of the major players in the core, including our main trio, are aiming for his head, resulting in Muzan warping everyone to his castle for a series of final battles. Not gonna lie, this was impressive so far. The beginning gives us a strong change to the status quo, our villain being a threat, a reason for everyone in the core to want him dead outside of him being responsible for creating the demons, aka their main enemy throughout the show. Tamaya finally gets to do something after not doing much since her introduction, and the overall atmosphere once entering the castle sets up the high tension incredibly well. So what's the problem? Well, it's everything after this point where everything slams into a fucking wall for me. So, let's start chronologically. It starts off fine initially. We get a personal reason for Shinobu fighting Doma since he was responsible for the death of Kanai, and we get to see her exhibit genuine rage instead of her usual apathetic but blunt self, which is a nice change of pace for the character. Sure, Doma's a flat as fuck antagonist, and this fight doesn't really help fix that in my eyes, but it's a good moment for and the poison cheese got broken out in a couple of minutes. First off, remember this for later. Secondly, well, she's dead. Now on the one hand, at least she goes down swinging, and that moment is genuinely pretty good. But on the other hand, why does she have to die against the most bland and boring of the upper moons thus far? Seriously, Doma's annoying, his backstory is not all that interesting. Really, all his backstory amounted to was, yeah, he was an asshole back then. Like, great. Fuck. His chemistry with the other characters sucks. He's not even a love-to-hate villain. He's just a waste of fucking space on the pages. And that is so disappointing to see. Because this is the last arc. I'd expect more depth from these enemies, but as we'll get more into this arc, that's not gonna happen for the most part. What a fucking shame. Speaking of shame, so Zenitsu got this badass moment, and it's established that he can use his skills normally reserved for him being asleep while he's awake now. Okay, that's good development, and it's a good thing we saw it on screen. Wait, what's that? What's that? We didn't see him develop either of these? Well, okay, there wasn't a training arc, so There was a training arc? And it was literally the arc before this one? Wow! That is fucking pathetic! Like, holy shit! You had a golden opportunity to develop this character, and you just didn't do it? You gave him this development off screen? What the absolute fuck?! So instead of this being a satisfying moment of Zenitsu growing as a character, he gets most of this growth off screen, and the audience is just supposed to accept that? Maybe it's just me? Then piss off with that shit! They deserve way better than this! Speaking of piss off, we find out in this fight that Zenitsu's master killed himself because Keigaku turned into a demon. So a character we knew of for 2 seconds died because a character that got mentioned a couple of times in a fleeting thought/short flashback became one of Muzan Jackson's backup dancers, and I'm expected to care about this? I'm sorry, but this story hasn't given me any reason to care about this because we knew next to nothing about Zenitsu's interactions with either of them. For fuck's sake, there was more of a bond/chemistry between Tanjiro and Sakonji when Tanjiro was training back at the start of the series, and Tanjiro was mostly trying to cut a rock in half alone in the forest for most of said training. Fuck! So, this big moment for Zenitsu, where he surpasses Keigaku, who learned every other form of lightning breathing while Zenitsu only learned the first and avenges his master, is wasted! Unfortunately for me, because I knew next to nothing about either of these characters up until this point, so why the fuck should I care that Keigaku was a jealous pissant because he would be a co-successor and not a real successor to the lightning breath style? None! What also doesn't help is that the reason he became a demon is because he wanted to get even stronger, and that's it. And the drywall at a hardware store has more depth and intrigue than this character's entire fucking existence. So how does this get wrapped up? Zenitsu just uses a new technique he pulled out of his ass so that he could fight Keigaku as an equal. Oh, you're expecting a bit? Yeah, no, I'm not joking. This is how the fight ends. Seriously. But at least we get to see Zenitsu's master tell him that Zenitsu's his pride and joy, which would actually mean something if I was given any reason to care about this old fart. This fight is such a letdown, and yet it's treated as such a major moment for Zenitsu's character. He deserved way better than this. Why didn't we see him training to overcome his weakness of being good at fighting on his sleep, or learning this new technique that killed Keigaku? Or hell, why didn't we get more moments with Zenitsu interacting with Keigaku or his master to make the moment where we see Keigaku show up as a demon much more shocking and sad for the reader? But I digress. So while Zenitsu is recovering from that waste of time, we finally get Tanjiro fighting the man who took Rengoku's life, Akaza. Honestly, not much to complain about here. This is a genuinely good fight for the most part. We get a reason to want Akaza dead since we saw him before and killed the character we spent a good amount of time on. He was part of the reason Tanjiro wanted to get stronger, so the motivation and revenge aspects are right there. Oh, it's also nice to see Gyu participate in the battle since he didn't really do much fighting since the Rui stuff back in the early arcs. It's some really good stuff, not gonna lie. And then the fight keeps going after Akaza got his head chopped off and we spend multiple chapters on Akaza's backstory. Now, the backstory itself is fine. It does an effective job in making me care about the character of Akaza, even if most of his personality was gone when he morphed into a demon, but still. It just feels off to me that this flashback is inserted as a way to effectively end Akaza's life, when beheading him worked just fine in the chapter it happened. He let his guard down, he didn't see Tanjiro's potential in that moment, and he got punished for it. This was an effective enough death. But no, instead he decides to die after remembering his life as a human, and that's how the fight ends. Now like I said, backstory is fine. I'm just not a fan of using this flashback to effectively be the reason Akaza dies, because Tanjiro overcoming him worked just fine personally. And the sad thing is, this was probably my favorite part of this final arc outside of maybe the ending. So even the best part in my eyes has some big, noticeable problems. And speaking of goddammit, Inosuke and Kanao vs. Doma was a terrible fucking fight. Oh sure, the techniques are fine, so on a spectacle level it works, I guess. But the minute I go deeper from a story, thematic, and pacing perspective, it breaks apart faster than a fucking bubble. So, I get why Kanao wants to fight Doma. She just saw her adoptive sister die right in front of her, and he was also responsible for the death of her other sibling, and she's pissed off. Rightfully so. However, we also find out that Doma was responsible for the death of Inosuke's mom, and this gives Inosuke a reason to want to kill Doma. Which on the surface, I want to say is good writing, if I forget that the last time Inosuke even thought about his family was back in the Spider arc with Rui, and even that moment was more so confusion on his part. After that portion, he never really talked about or even thought about his family, which would imply that it doesn't really matter to him, which, okay, fair enough, Inosuke is a simple man who likes simple things. But in this arc, oh no, he's pissed off! He wants his head, which he was already planning on doing anyways, but whatever. And I have to ask, if he was this curious about his past to the point that this revelation will piss him off this badly, why was it only mentioned once prior to this point and then forgotten about?
I forgore.
Like Zenitsu, this is one of the main fucking characters. And yet this important part, this important moment of character development, just comes up out of fucking nowhere. And that is so disappointing to me as a reader, because I like seeing character development occur naturally. But this just isn't one of those cases. And that fucking sucks to see. And then there is the ending of the fight. Woo boy! So, Kanao and Inosuke are getting their asses kicked, and Doma's about to leave, but then magically, he starts dissolving from the poison Shinobu had. Wait a fucking minute. Is the one that's breaking him down the same poison that Doma was able to break down in less than a couple of minutes? Oh, but she specifically states it's a high concentration of the wisteria poison, and her entire body is coated in it. Except, isn't that still the same poison as the one she uses in her sword? So no change to the formula?
Oh sure, it'd be a higher concentration, and as a result it would take longer to break it down, but as we saw in Shinobu's fight, he was able to break it down, so a higher concentration wouldn't change this. It just means it would take longer to break it down, and that the poison would be acting quicker, which would be a problem for a human, but not a demon who was barely taking any damage during this fight, and was mostly just standing, save for the occasional dodge and attack, giving his body even more time to break down the poison. Hell, this fight took longer than Shinobu's fight, and had multiple moments of just talking, giving you even further opportunities for the poison to be broken down. Not to mention, up to this point, Doma's body wasn't showing any reaction to the poison, nor was the body showing signs of poisoning until he was just about to leave. I'm sorry, that's bullshit! It would have shown up much sooner, or at the very least, we would have seen signs of his face's color changing / melting due to the poison, or at the very least, we would have seen signs of his face's color changing / melting due to the poison, and we don't see that at all. Now, granted, it's stated that Tamayo helped Shinobu, but we don't know if that assistance was the human making drug was added to the poison, or if all Tamayo did was get notes to make the drug stronger against Muzan. All we have are guesses, so it's either assumed that Shinobu's poison included elements of making Doma human, thus weakening his breaking down of the poison, and if that's the case, I love how it works only against Doma, but against Muzan it just doesn't, but we'll get to that. Or if it's just the same as before, in which, see previous rant. And yes, if this didn't occur, Inosuke and Kanao would have died, and Doma would have gotten away, but there must have been a better solution than just the poison magically working now, despite it breaking down every other time Shinobu used it on Doma.
Oh, and speaking of them, Kanao just magically have special eyes that allow her to perceive movement in slow motion. Wow, how magically fucking convenient!
My overacting aside,
next up is Mitsuri and Obanai versus Rank 4. Oh boy, a fight against a character that has no personality. Next! Now, the fight starts off decently, with Miuchiro going all out, and still doing so even after losing an arm to Kokushibo, showing the difference in power the two have, and even after Genya and Sanemi join the fight, things are still relatively fine in terms of the overall fight. Hell, we even get a nice moment between Sanemi and Genya, where Sanemi talks about how Genya should have had the chance to have a family, how he should have had a chance to grow old to make up for Sanemi's failure of his siblings and his mom dying. Sure, it would be nice to have them fight a character that's steeping on a teardrop, but in theory, this is a good fight so far. And then Gyome shows up. And after a decent chapter, albeit with some tiresome exposition about how uber awesome Gyome is from Kokushibo, the fight barrels down into crab territory in chapter 170. So, in this chapter, it is established that those with the Demon Slayer mark, without exception, die at the
addendum. So, I'm kind of a dumbass, and I wrote a big-ass tangent on how stupid the curse is, based on information that I read from the story that said that they died at age 25. Looking at the official translation, though, it's actually written as them dying before 25. Granted, I'll still find this curse incredibly stupid and pointless. However, I'd rather not spread misinformation. So, here's me attempting to salvage this tangent as best as I can, but yeah, I'm kind of a dumbass. Anyways, back to the TMP character real quick.
I despise this concept so much. I understand and agree that power-up should have its strengths and weaknesses, which it's already fucking had, but we'll get to that in a moment. But the idea to then put these guys on a fucking time limit is absolutely absurd, because they still haven't reached their prime yet. So, what, they gotta fuck early or else their lineage is dead? Fuck, that's stupid. Furthermore, most of the time before this point, the users of these techniques were out of commission for several days and would have fevers after using said techniques. So that's already a weakness right there. Also, remember the flashback with Shinobu and Kanao that indicates that Upper Moon was the strongest 3 Ashura? Even if this was said without the consideration of the Demon Slayer mark, that's another weakness right there. That even with the mark, they still might not be strong enough to solo an Upper Moon. Point the third. Literally in the same chapter as this revelation, we find out that someone did live past the age of 25. Even if it was established later on that it was due to them being born with the mark, it still doesn't help the fact that this story broke its own rule not even a few pages after introducing it. And finally, point the fourth. You want to know how many died because of the mark after this got introduced? Hundreds? Thousands? Millions? 0. We see absolutely no one dying from this mark's curse.
But what about Muichiro, Obanai, and Mitsuri?
They died from fighting demons. This would be like if people died from a hurricane and then saying it was all because of a random curse inflicted. They were going to die anyways. What the fuck is the point in adding in some mystical curse bullshit? Answer? None! And that's the best way I can describe this curse. Completely fucking worthless. You basically introduced a major curse/weakness that had no reason to exist in the story. Thanks for wasting my fucking time, Demon Slayer. Speaking of waste, so as the rest of the fight goes on, and it's meh for me, we find out that the flaming/red sword Tanjiro used in the swordsmith village can be used by anyone with a mark, as shown with Murichiro, Gyome, and Saname setting their blades on fire and fucking over Kokushibo. Oh boy, I love having unique abilities get tossed around like candy. But hey, at least they beat Kokushibo and the fight is... Oh, for fuck's sake! So how does he die? Oh, easy! He discovers that he looks ugly after regenerating, and then the Nichiren blade, / flaming blade, whatever you want to call it, from Muichiro starts to disintegrate his body despite it being removed pages ago.
I forgot.
And it being mentioned that his regeneration was still working, albeit slowly. I fucking hate it here. Like with Akaza, we had a decent idea here, with all three overpowering Kokushibo at the cost of removing a unique ability Tanjiro had, but still. But the author just kept going, because, oh fuck, we need to give this guy a backstory. The backstory largely boils down to, I'm on shit until one day when I realized, oh fuck, Yoriichi is so much better than me. Because yet again, this fucking story loves to suck off Yoriichi as if he's the second coming of Christ, to the point of him being a main focus of someone else's fucking backstory. Yes, I know they're siblings, but it's still fucking stupid that they made Yoriichi the main focus of Kokushibo's backstory. And because most of it is dedicated to Yoriichi, this backstory just paints Kokushibo as just a petty little brother and doesn't exactly make him sympathetic or interesting. If anything, it just makes me hate him from a writing perspective because he was already flat writing-wise, and now after this information, he's just a shallow twat. Not exactly a love-to-hate character or even a deep one. What a fucking letdown. This is the #1 Upper Moon, and this is the best they could do with him? Fucking #3 Akaza got a more interesting backstory by comparison. Oh my god, I felt more compassion and interest from Gyataro and Dagi's backstories than this. What the hell happened here? Well, whatever. The Upper Moons are dead. Now it's time to deal with Muzan. Yeah, shocker, the poison turned human didn't fucking work. Which, going back to Doma, if that was added to the poison, I fucking love how it only worked with Doma and not Muzan. Just, fucking love it. Hate it here. And now Muzan gets an uber powerful form that looks so fucking disappointing. Like, really? This is the King of the Demon's final form. For fuck's sake, you just slapped a bunch of teeth on him and called it a day. Kokushibo looked more like a demon king than this. Both his initial demon form and the one he took on after getting a new head. Hell, several Upper Moons look more demonic than this. God damn, what the hell happened here? So technically, this is the end of the arc with Muzan collapsing the castle, but I added in the final fight as part of the final arc instead of just making a video on this in the Sunrise Countdown arc. So we're gonna continue on to the final fight. Hence why I said technically the final arc in my opening statement. So, final fight, Muzan dominates everyone and also infects Tanjiro with his demon art, which leads to him basically dying, except not really because he gets sent back in time. We finally get to see Yoriichi have some moments of weakness, finally. It's like, yeah, he failed to fully kill Muzan, he let Tamaya get away, his wife and child died, he was bitched at for his brother becoming a demon, but that's not something he had a part in, so that's more so on the Demon Slayers for being stupid than him, but whatever. But, yeah, we finally got something about Yoriichi that wasn't talking about how awesome he is. Kudos! Pity that this happened near the end, but still, kudos. Yoriichi at least feels like a fucking character now. And after this point, Tanjiro figures out how to do all the steps of the Fire God, and it only slows down Muzan's regeneration a bit. All the build-up, all that fucking time spent on training, for slowing Muzan down a bit. What the fuck? Oh, and it gets stupider. So remember how the drug didn't work on turning Muzan human? Well, it turns out that while the drug failed to turn him human, it did rapidly age him, prevent him from exploding his cells, and slowly degenerate his cells on top of it. So it didn't turn him human, it just basically turned him human. Wow. Isn't that fucking convenient? Especially considering that, like Doma, we never saw the effects prior to this point. So why the fuck would it activate now?
Almost sounds like this wasn't at all planned. It was just pulled off the ass last minute to fix the problem of an overpowered antagonist. Gee, does that fucking sound familiar? Let's also ignore for a minute that there was nothing stopping Muzan from just breaking down the drugs like Doma did with Shinobu's poison, especially since Muzan had ample time to do so in comparison to Doma. Hell, he was in that cocoon for God knows how long, so even if it had the potential to sap his strength, he'd still have plenty after removing all the drugs. But hey, I get it. It's not like the organs and cells designed to filter out and or break down viruses can operate on its own without the need for the human to command the body to do so. Oh, wait, what's that? What's that? That's literally what an immune system does to viruses we don't even know are in our body? Meaning that the body itself could have filtered out the drugs without Muzan knowing about it?
I fucking hate it here! Oh my god! Oh, but how could they have defeated Muzan then?
The sun. That's literally all they're doing anyways. They're stalling for fucking time until the rider decides to bring the sun up.
Oh, but if the poison was filtered out, how could they defeat Muzan then? After all, even Muzan states that he could easily defeat them.
Strategy, which is also what they used during this final fight. Numerous times. Hell, to use another shonen series, Joseph couldn't beat the Pillarmen through raw strength. He had to outsmart them, and those fights worked really fucking well. Until ultimate cards, but the point still stands. My overall point here is that its decision to effectively nerf Muzan at the last minute thanks to a drug that magically has extra conditions after the initial one gets filtered out is absolutely ridiculous. It just feels like a last minute decision to fix your mistake and making Muzan too strong when there were so many better ways to fix it. Also, it's different from the poison used against Doma. I've never encountered it before. It will take time to analyze and counteract it. You literally had 4 to 5 hours to break down this fucking poison. Get the fuck out of here with this nonsense. Especially when Doma broke down Shinobu's blade poison in far less time. And you had multiple moments for your body to subconsciously filter out the virus on top of that, even if you didn't know it existed in your body, because again, immune system is a thing. Alright. Muzan finally dies in the sun, at the cost of Tanjiro dying. Technically again, but semantics. And, you know what? All this fight took its sweet-ass time to end. At least it's finally... I hate this shit! Already killed Muzan, albeit by whittling your feet to the conclusion in terms of the story's pacing. Now you bring him back in Tanjiro's body to do some freaky shit? Fuck the hell right off! So after wasting my fucking time for 2 chapters, Tanjiro becomes human again, and Muzan is finally fucking gone! After this, we just get some last-minute follow-ups to our main cast, where we jump ahead to a few generations later, where we see the descendants of our main cast living life, and some of the dead got reincarnated to new forms. It's an overall happy ending, but the road to it was paved with spikes. I hated this fucking arc. The pacing sucked, the antagonists sucked, the last-minute saves were fucking bullshit, and even the final fight sucked ass. But you know what? I did it. I'm free. I finally got this crap off my chest after so long. I don't even care that it was nitpicking for the most part. It's out of my fucking mind, and I don't have to talk about this crappy arc ever again. I'm free. I'm free. I'm free! I'm free! Yes! And now that I've dealt with that fictional garbage, it's time for me to deal with something I can't be freed of until I die. Being an adult/parent, at least in this reality. So I gotta go cook dinner for my family. So until we meet again, I'm David Grimm, and thank you so very much for watching.